What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Immortal Minds. This time we have a very, very, very British episode, which is amazing. We've got Sideshow, Def, and Paula all here to share their thoughts on all the news and action that's been going on in the Valorant worlds. What's up, guys? I guess we can go left to right. How are you doing, Sideshow? It's good to have you on.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. I've been enjoying watching Immortal Minds, so nice to give my thoughts. I'm not immortal, though. I've slipped downwards, down.
Maybe we can team up because I need some help as well.
Yeah, I'll drag you down if you want.
Def, how you doing? Hard at work with Dignitas?
Of course. Yeah, I'm doing really good. Really excited to be on the show.
Awesome. And we've got Paula.
Rory, give it some effort, bro. What is that? Oh yeah. I'm really excited to be here, guys. How long's it gonna be, by the way? Like
Paula's my best friend.
I miss you, Rory. I miss you, bro. It's been too long.
Yeah, it's awesome too because Mike, who is been hard at work with Immortal Minds for ages. He's I feel like he is kind of an honorary Brit in many respects. He knows the lingo. He watches all the shows. He's a Peep Show fan. So this is awesome. It's good feels here today. I want to get straight into things though. We have had lots of stuff going on in terms of patches and just scene news, all sorts of things to get into. And the first thing is we've had more or less about a week or so to experiment with Icebox, and it's a bit mental. Like, what are some of the initial impressions now you guys have actually been able to play it?
I can start. I think Icebox, such a weird map. In my opinion, I think they could actually half the size of some of these maps. It's just so elevated. I thought they were going in the direction of getting away from the jet orb and them annoying angles, but actually I think they've added to it on Icebox, so I can see Icebox being changed a lot, actually.
It is a really different map. It's very different. But I kind of like that as well, because I think the more different maps they make, the more they can balance the agents based on being selected for different maps. And so they could, like, in theory, they could kind of nerf the crap out of Jet, and she might still see like a lot of playtime on something like Icebox still. So the more different maps you add to the pool like this that are very have such different themes to them. I feel like Icebox has enormous bomb sites, but very quick flanking routes through mid. So you can get like pushed from behind quite a lot if you're attacking or defending, which is very different to a lot of the other maps. They normally have very small sites and then long corridors leading to them. And it changes the dynamic of the map a lot, even before you get to the verticality.
Yeah. I haven't been able to like play it loads yet, but I think it's good so far. Like I think most of the maps in the game have been designed well, but there are always little things that maybe you could change here and there to switch up exactly how they play out. So I don't have like a firm opinion on it yet. I want to see it played more competitively. I need to tune into some of the streams where the professional teams are playing and see how it actually works when people like Rory, etc., are giving it a spin.
Yeah, I really like Sideshow's point as well, because I think that it does really certainly go with the overall theme of what appears to be what Riot want for this game, where we all kind of feel as though the draft is going to make sense given just how many agents are going to come into the game. And it reminds me a little bit of StarCraft in a sense, where one way of the main way of balancing back in the StarCraft days in Brood War, where they didn't have the ability to have super active developer support where they're patching all the time, like maybe in StarCraft 2, was they just made the maps differently. They made it so that the maps would favor certain races more so than others, and that would kind of impact tournament results pretty enormously. So I like this idea a lot. That's this could be a map where it has its very, very own meta, and it breaks a lot of the rules maybe on some of the other maps. Or that, at least that kind of thinking makes it exciting, I think, from a spectator's point of view. We actually found a clip someone posted in Immortal Minds actually of Steel's first impressions of this map. We can like run that quickly, see what Steel thinks.
What's Josh gonna say? Something crazy,
He's up top.
I assume.
He's up top. He's up top. Yo, he's up top A. He's up top A. He's up top
I
A.
can't hear it, guys.
I'm on the stream.
He's on Gen.
Oh,
He's
yeah,
on tall
he's trying to
box.
sound
He's on
on
green
the
box.
screen,
He's on
yeah.
brown box. He's on the tube. He's on the
That would
platform.
probably help.
He's
Mike.
on battle elements.
I mean, as producer, surely you should tell me.
He's up. Top.
Oh man, yeah, I see.
He was losing it towards the end there, you could see.
Yeah, definitely going to be interesting to make some calls for this. I don't know, have you guys been working on that, Def, so far?
We haven't actually touched Icebox. They have, every time they bring a map out, they have like the cooldown period or whatever. So we don't expect to play the map until the second qualifiers. So we're currently not touching it.
That makes a lot of sense.
But for me, this is probably one of the first maps we don't see Cypher as the main, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think maybe Killjoy is better on this map.
Yeah, Killjoy seems so much more useful, right? Because there's so many... you start with no map control when you're attacking or defending as well, because the barriers are so far back. And the map is like... The sites are big, but the connections between them are really small. So if they push the barriers up anymore, you'd be like sniffing each other before you began. And there's so many different doors to be able to cover. Like if you're on attack, what are you supposed to trip if you're a Cypher? Like both of the exits from A plus somewhere in mid, and then there's 2 exits out of B that they could be flanking from as well. And one Killjoy turret can just lock the whole thing down, and then you just shove it over by green when you're on defense.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
Yeah, it seems like, as well, like all of these, they always want to have some kind of a gimmick, something that makes the map feel like its own thing. We had the doors coming in on Ascent, we had the teleporters on Bind, we have I guess some of the verticality in ropes and split, but I suppose Icebox, it's the ropes and verticality in these huge sites as well. So what do you guys feel when you're playing these maps? And like for Ascent, it feels like the doors aren't really impactful, honestly. It doesn't really feel like that adds a lot in comparison to, let's say, teleporters on Bind. That to me is something that's unique to a map that provides the most kind of options in gameplay that you can make strategies around, whereas the doors kind of feel very flat on Ascent. Where does the kind of map gimmick land on Icebox, do you think?
Just with regards to that, Dan, I mean, I'm not playing on a pro team, but when I play Ascent, the doors make a big difference to my experience. Rory, do you agree that, like, on a pro level, do the doors not make too much of a difference?
Yeah, I think the doors actually are pretty good, pretty good gimmick. Because honestly, right now, even in pro play, like teams are using the doors in strange ways. Like they'll just close the door instantly on Ascent on A site, and then they'll shoot the door down. So if they were to come A execute, the door's already broken, and they'd have to use a smoke or a cage, or whatever. So there is definitely creative ways of using the doors, but most of the time the B door is closed and the A door is shot down. In the ad scrims right now, that's how the doors are used, at least.
Fair enough. I'll I think
take that, Dan.
Yeah.
But I don't like the ropes, to be honest. I don't like the ropes on Split, and I'm not too much of a fan of the ropes on Icebox, but we'll see.
Though there's the central rope, the horizontal rope seems pretty insane.
Yeah, I mean,
it's so weird though, because it's not like the map needs the gimmick in order to be different from the other maps. It's not like
Why
they
is
just
it
copy
there?
and pasted. I don't know. They've created a very different fundamental map design with massive different verticality, a very different like map layout and format. And then they're like, yeah, fuck it, let's throw a rope in as well.
I think so.
So weird. It breaks the timings so strangely on A. It does add an interesting dynamic, but it's such an odd thing to have to the game, and your movement on and off the rope seems very strange and non-fluid too, in order to make it balanced. I don't know.
I think that's my gripe with it. It's just it doesn't work well. It's not like
it doesn't give it. So at least on the surface, for me, yeah, I totally get what Sideshow's saying. It's like there's a clip that we're going to pull up, right, of that rope being used, and it kind of causes some chaos and works in favor of the team using it. But beyond that, I'm trying to think of like a coordinated play around it. Like, can you use smokes that hover, like Omen smokes that hover on the rope so that you can kind of go through it without people seeing you and then appear on?
You can't put an Omen smoke on the rope, surely.
Yeah, I don't. Do you know what I mean? I'm just trying to think, like, what are there ways to use this in in a structured way? Because this is insane.
Someone put in chat rope drive button. That's essentially what it's used for.
Yeah.
You could Sova dart a guy and he's going across just Sova darted.
That's actually so sick. Oh my god. It's going to be fun to see what people come up with on this map. Honestly, it's actually so fun to see maps that are like broken in various ways, just to see what people come up with begrudgingly, but still. Anything before we move on away from Icebox and talking about it? Is there anything else that you guys want to mention in terms of what you would want to see changed with that map? Because it's definitely going to get some changes. All the maps tend to.
Def, what's your feel on whether it's attacker or defender sided? I feel like that is so interesting on this map because to me, it seems at the outset, when you just look at the map, it seems very defender sided because there's so many angles. Like you would have to check 1,000 angles as you come into a site. But when we played it, and admittedly, this is at like a diamond level, it's nowhere near the pro level. But it seemed like once you actually got the bomb down, once you actually plant the spike, these sites are very difficult to retake. And I feel like a lot of Valorant is balanced around retaking. Is like, okay, you can use all your utility to execute onto a site, but the retakes, generally speaking, are pretty viable as well.
It's a really good question. I actually think the map might end up T-sided or attack-sided at least, just because the size of the map. I feel like the map size dictates sometimes. Like if you take Season, I'm not sure you coming from Overwatch exact. But there's a map in CS called Season, and it kind of reminds me of Icebox. It's really wide, only 2 bomb sites, and it made it really difficult for the CTs to rotate in time. So like if we were to default an Icebox on the T side, on the attack side, and then we were just to hit the site slowly, the rotate takes so long from B to A on Icebox right now. I feel like you could just slow roll the site and take it with utility and never lose. So that's why I think Icebox. I think the map needs to be shrunk in half. The spawn is as big as some maps. Like it's hard to describe.
It would have been it would have been interesting because I always thought that Season needed a bit of contra. You know, that like underground waterway that like speeds you up. And if they have like the ropes, maybe they need some kind of like rope at the back of spawn or something that just like allows you to go very quickly to kind of manipulate those rotation timings. I always actually, because you have the teleporters and bind that does that effectively, it cuts a rotation time in, well, it's very, very different given the 2 positions, but why not have something like that for the bigger maps? We never really got that in CS except for Contra. I can feel like in terms of competitive maps.
The answer is to add more ropes.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's why I could tell you were laughing about that, Sideshow, because I was like, yeah, just how crazy can we make this, boys? Right? He teleports, ropes through teleports that you can reverse on, and it's just like in an infinite regress between 2 points.
Oh, we need the rope for a teleport now. That'd be so sick. I love that. Get some jump pads in there. Yeah,
it's a mess.
That actually sounds epic.
Yeah, I mean, maybe for Diabolical and Quake and stuff where it's super fast paced, right? But I don't know, that I think too much craziness, like too many. Like I need to play more with the horizontal rope, the HR, let's say, before I pass judgment on it. But right now, an Icebox in general, it's on that map. It doesn't seem to make too much sense to me, but I'm sure that they'll like, at least in my opinion, I can respect the map designers and them as a development team trying to do something different, having this type of road, but I just can't see it really working out. So let's see. I think they'll keep that in. Maybe they'll experiment with it a bit, how it works.
I would be so much more worried if Icebox was boring. Yeah, and it's definitely not boring. It's kind of mental. So it shows that they're not lacking for creative ways to push the maps in the future. I mean, I know that it's a ridiculous ask, but I just want more. Just more maps. That's what's going to really help this game, is to get to a point where you have so many that you can pick the best bunch.
I agree completely too. I think they should release a block of maps in one go.
I don't think it's going to happen though. I think this was their a level of their design philosophy, that they wanted to release drip feed maps to see how they play out and then assess what they want to do with future maps from there. Again, this is just me theorizing, but I assume that's how they're approaching it.
The general population takes a long time to learn a map as well. I mean, the pro players will be grinding it and figuring out every little spot, but little Timmy who launches Valorant doesn't really understand what the hell he's doing when he gets into a brand new map. So if you release 10 of them at a time, people are just going to be lost.
Yeah, true. How many maps do you think Valorant needs?
Double the amount,
CS,
at least.
Right?
You think? Oh wait, see, that's it, right? We go back to CS every time and say, did CS do everything right?
I think no, it didn't do it. It doesn't do everything right, but it's a good amount. I think the map pool in CS is I would like more maps in all games, right? But I think CS has a good middle ground. But I wouldn't dislike more maps in CS. I definitely wouldn't dislike more maps in Valorant. So,
but also, I mean, what are you discussing there? Because from I followed the CS scene casually, but it was my understanding that the CS scene didn't really have like an amount of maps because there was community made maps. So in theory, there's like the potential amount of maps is enormous. It was just selecting the best ones for the competitive rotation, wasn't it?
Yeah. Pretty much, yeah. And so I guess what I mean is that if we could have as many awesome proper competitive maps, me personally, I'd love to have more choices. But then there are times where, for instance, when Cobble went out of the rotation, I agreed with that. I'm like, yeah, this map's a bit dry now. It needs a remake. It needs some reinvigoration. So yeah, there's definitely a balance to be struck, Sideshow. But for sure in Valorant, we need some more. I think we need some more.
The biggest difference is just community creation.
Yeah, I think so. I wonder if they'll ever let. I'm sure they will eventually, but
let the grubby public on their beautiful IP.
Exactly.
That would be pretty sick. Community is pretty damn creative. I think, like, historically, in pretty much all of the big esports games, a lot of them are built off the back of community-made content. But that's just like, I guess, historically speaking. I guess it can go back to like Carmack just making everything available, like, and that kind of being the standard all the way through to obviously like Half-Life as well. So yeah, different times. It'd be interesting to see what they come up with. But obviously, First Strike is something that I want to move the discussion towards, as we did get some extra information about it. We've got some dates, but I think one of the more interesting things to talk about is some of the rules, and specifically around map selection and also coaching. It seems like they've made their stance on coaching clear in the rulebook, where the coaches have fairly minimal input. They're able to talk within one timeout, and that's kind of it during a match. It looks like they're staying somewhat consistent with League, and definitely staying somewhat consistent with CS:GO's approach, which is to like distance coaches as much as they can, and still seems reasonable. So, what is your first input like for something like this?
Rory, you want to take the floor?
Sure. I think, to be honest, me right now, we were looking for an analyst and not a coach, obviously because of the coach slot taking a while. But I think with this rulebook came out now, I think we might see more analysts than coaches. At least they'll take that role of an analyst where they do a lot of the demo watching and the reviewing. But in terms of the hands-on coaching, they can't even be in the server right now. So
yeah, I'm not entirely sure sort of the reason behind this approach. Again, we're esports, we're not traditional sports, but look at we can still draw parallels, right, and experience from one to the other. And traditional sports, mixed martial arts, box, anything. Yeah, your coach can shout. Like when there's professional football matches going on, it's Real Madrid versus Barcelona. The managers are there and they're screaming instructions. As long as it's I can't see why that can't be the case with esports, with CS and Valorant and Overwatch, etc. Because I can only see that increasing skill level, increasing like the level that's being played. So I don't whilst it's starting like this, I wouldn't be surprised if it changed over time. Have to remember, very new in the life. We're very early on in the life cycle of the game. But my personal opinion is that I would like to see more freedom for coaches across esports. And this Valorant rule I find quite. I'm not taking it too seriously because I imagine it could change over time. But as it stands now, yeah, I am kind of like, why? I don't really understand it based on what I just said.
Yeah, I agree. I think the more support staff you can get in there, that the competition obviously is going to be higher.
Yeah, I come from the Overwatch League where people have coaching staffs that are sometimes nearly as big as the player the player amounts. There's a huge amount of that kind of stuff in the game, and they obviously can't call. I mean, they wouldn't want to call because the pace of Overwatch is so frantic. I feel like that's something that Valorant is clearly trying to avoid here, is the coaches ever being active within the server to the point where they could have large round-to-round impact in terms of like making mid-round adaptations or round-to-round adaptations as well. It's supposed to be general things, the general flow of the match, the general strategy, that kind of stuff is more where they've allowed them to be. I think it's also really interesting, not just that they can only talk in timeouts and half times and agent selection, but also just that the travel and expenses thing lists one coach and one team manager as well, which is, I think it's such a interesting restriction as well. Again, coming from Overwatch, where people have a coach and an analyst and an assistant coach and stuff like that, and one of them will be doing strategy and one of them will be analysis of other teams and the other will be doing more like I don't know, general head coaching position. It's the delegation of tasks in Overwatch has become very very refined when it comes to coaching. And to pile that all into one person and ship them off with the team seems like you're not getting the most out of that staff to be able to support the organization.
It's a weird one too, because I think like Apollo's talking about traditional sports, and one of the things that I think is really cool there is just like the accountability and responsibility of a coach, that they have all this authority and power and responsibility to drive and deliver results on the team. And I love that having that focal point, having that person that knows everything about the players and the team and is responsible and can create a reputation for themselves in how good they are at that thing. Like that's something that has been missing. In CS, it was missing in a lot of senses, because although you have the coaches, it's still so much about the players, and especially given the fact that the coaches had less that they could do in the server due to the restrictions that Valve placed, it kind of never really allowed us to kind of get to that point. We have like a few coaches that it's somewhat clear that their impact is enormous, but just not quite in that same way. Like, and I think really I can only think of, I would say like Zonic for Astralis, really, who would have a reputation like that he has clearly put his mark on that team and been a huge driver of the success. But I don't really feel like any other team really has created a reputation like that with one of their coaches. And I think that's a cool thing. And we are going to move away from that with this. It's going to be more about the players on the server. And as people are mentioning in the chat, it's like, maybe it is this idea of, do you want to take work away from that identity on the server of the IGL? Because if the more that a coach is involved, the more a coach is going to be able to do that work for the team. So it's a difficult one. Like, what is the ideal world for you guys? Do you feel like one way is better? Because in one sense, if you have to have a guy that's really good at IGLing, that is an extra way you can be better than your opponents with the 5 players you have on the server.
Well, the thing for me, I don't understand. As long as a coach can't exploit their position behind the players and looking at screens or whatever, I don't see why a coach can't talk whenever they want. What's the strong argument for that? I don't know if there is one, if anyone knows.
I mean, I would assume it's just eroding the position of the IGL. Like, it's been such an established thing within the game.
Yeah.
And it is cool to have that presence within the team. Like, I love, what I really love watching CS from an outside perspective is that there is such a well-defined team captain in so many scenarios. And okay, maybe the captain role isn't always overlapping with the IGL, but that like figurehead of the guy, the brains within the server is a very cool model for a lot of teams. And I don't think it'll be as focused within Valorant. I think Valorant, you have to call your own plays a lot more than you did in CS. So the calling style will probably be a little less hierarchical. But still, I think that if your coach is going to be able to call all the plays within the round, I don't know, something about that rubs me the wrong way. Like, that should be the players.
Yeah, no, I don't mean that I don't mean that the coach should be calling everything, but I mean just being able to have the freedom to talk when they want. I don't see an argument, like a mechanical argument against that. Like Rory, for you, for instance, who's now you're now playing Overwatch. Sorry, Overwatch. You're now playing Valorant fresh, and you come from CS. What would you prefer?
I like what DDK said. I think the fact that the 5 on the server is a true representation of the team. And then if you look at coach, I think we're not estimating how much work there's going to be in the agent selection and the comps and counter comping. I think the coach is going to be dedicated to that, to be honest, because if the coach can't make mid-round decisions anyway, there's really no point him talking at all times.
So when you were playing CS, then you wouldn't have enjoyed it if you had a coach behind you that could give input when they wanted to. You don't see much benefit to that. In which case, fair enough.
I think there's truly benefit to the team, and I think you're going to play better in certain scenarios. But is it a true representation of the 5 on the server? Because then
that's not how team sports work. There's always
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you, but I can also see the direction that they're trying to move into.
Yeah, so it's more. Yeah, it's like it's not artistic. It's like if you want the game to be that way, then yeah, sure.
Either way, if they decided either way, I'd have to go with it, obviously. But I think I prefer the one where the coach is doing a lot of the analyst work, and then the 5 in the server is truly the 5 that you're going to be playing. Like sometimes you can, like we're talking about good coaches. Like if we come from CS, we talk about Kassad, Zeus, who else? Who did you just mention? Sorry,
Zonic.
So them kind of guys, like if your coach is better than the other coach and maybe he has past experience, does that put that other team at a disadvantage? I'm sure it does if the coach can talk at all times.
Yeah, for sure, but it'll make the overall game more competitive when the coaches become better, right?
No, I agree with you too. Yeah, I'm just.
That's interesting. Yeah, what Knowing said, it's like that's my philosophy on it. But if Riot or you guys have a different one, yeah, it's which one they end up going with, right?
Yeah, I think that's right, though. There is so much work to be done, especially moving forwards to the future for coaches outside of the server. Like before you even get into the game, there will be so much work to be done for coaches, preparing you for a bunch of different compositions. I mean, if we have agent selection in the future that is, like a ban system, there's going to be so much preparation required, doing all of the research on your opponents and what they like to play. And then it'll be a case of, I think, the coach is just setting up like a general philosophy for you. Say you're going into the attacking half, you have one comp, they have another comp, you're on Haven, for example. The coach is there to give you kind of the philosophy that you should have going into the game. Really try and punish this guy on this side, try and watch out for X. And then they come in again when it comes to the defensive half to give you again that philosophy. And then all of the nitty gritty details are done by the IGL. I kind of like that. Like it makes sense as a model.
Yeah, and I can also see, as you said, so much value in areas that we wouldn't have in CS, for example, like as you were mentioning, like in that drafting phase, like in Dota, the drafting phase for me was one of the most enjoyable things to watch at a top level tournament. Just seeing that game of chess going between the two teams, just trying to understand and predict what the other team needs and wants, and kind of that dynamic going back and forth. And nothing can be truly planned because there can always be spanners thrown at the last second. But just seeing the coach sitting down to help with that process and preparing them with the playbook after the draft has been settled and stuff. That dynamic is going to be really interesting too. So definitely a lot to look forward to with how this could play out. Obviously, everything that Riot does is they put a lot of thinking into, and not to say that in CS it's not like that necessarily, but just it's a more hands-off approach philosophically in general in CS. But the other thing I think that was particularly interesting was the way that they're doing the map selection. Just going to try to pull it up here. I think it was the team with the lower seed picks the first two, bans the first 2 maps, and then
they get to pick which team they are. So team A or B if you're the better seed, and then team A picks 2 or gets rid of 2 maps, and then the other team gets to pick the map, and then they coin flip for sides, right?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Rory's just realized this is.
Yeah. That's a weird pick and ban, I guess.
Surprise, bro.
Makes sense. I was truly reading through some of this rulebook, like, what the hell? I haven't seen this before. So it's pretty interesting, though. I think with 4 maps, it's really weird right now, isn't it? It's hard to find one that they're happy with.
Yeah, I just thought, since we were finally moving to 5 maps, obviously not right away because they're putting it in the second part of the event, but I just figured they would try to come up with a better system for best of 1, because everyone before was complaining about how these events were working, because it seemed like the higher seed had a massive advantage no matter what, because they could always just get their best map, basically.
Yeah, totally. I complained about seeding in an interview, and that was my point totally. That the higher seeded team had such an advantage going into some of these games.
Do you feel like this kind of balances things out a little bit? Do you think this is completely absurd, or like, do you think this is something that could work out for you guys?
Yeah, I think just the fact that there's so little maps. Like, if you're a team and you've been playing for a while now, you should at least be consistently playing the 4 maps in the pool right now.
All right.
Is this rule so that they don't have to change the rule as it goes from 4 to 5 available maps? Is this just a temporary thing, I wonder? Because any other way that you could think of formulating a rule for a BO1 to find the map, you would have to change it based on whether the map pool is 4 or 5.
Right.
So I wonder whether this is just a way of them balancing it without having to redo the rules.
Until Icebox is put in.
Yeah. I don't know. All of this stuff could still be temporary, right? I mean, like, if the pros complain enough about the rule in whatever aspect it is during First Strike, and if it's consistent across regions that people dislike a certain thing, I feel like Riot will be open to change small things like map selection processes.
Totally. They've been really cool in listening to community feedback so far. So even things I'm sure they haven't wanted to change, they've actually gone and changed. So it's really cool to see.
And just for clarification as well, that's the selection process specifically for the best of 1 matches. The best of 3 matches is a little bit more conventional in terms of how the map selection goes. So yeah, I thought that stood out. So it's an interesting thing to mention. Yeah, really looking forward to seeing how everything shakes out with First Strike. Obviously, it's the first time as well, right? Really kind of going a bit more hands-on in terms of like producing a tournament as well. After the initial qualifier stages. And Rory, you're saying that because we just had the Renegades Invitational announced a couple of days ago, and that's starting today. That it seems to be the case that lots of teams are sort of saving stuff for First Strike. Is every single team just thinking about hiding stuff right now in this game, or is it like, how do you balance that between getting competition practice with your team as well? Because obviously there's very little competition, so it feels like I'm just getting at, like, it feels like there is this huge trade-off because there's very few competitions for practice. Like, how important is that?
Yeah, I think actually in this game you can play less scrims because I feel like you can give too much away. Sometimes we play scrims and we're just defaulting and not showing too much because there's certain setups in this game that as soon as you've seen them one time, it becomes very predictable if you try to do it again. So that's why we always try and go in between games and come up with stuff that can throw different looks in. But yeah, I think right now, what happened was people got invited almost a month ago, and now First Strike's been announced. They've realized, hey, maybe we should just skip this one. But I think scrims are really revealing. We've seen Sentinels probably scrim 4 or 5 times in the last 2 weeks. So I can tell for sure that they're saving stuff for First Strike, and other teams even... Go ahead, sir.
Do you think it's going to stay like that, Rory? Because we always see that. I mean, we've seen it, and I guess still sometimes see it to an extent in CS. People have spoken about this before with the meta of scrims and not revealing your hand entirely and saving a bit for the big tournament coming up. And then people avoiding scrims because they don't want to show anything at all. Do you think it's going to stay like this in Valorant? Or do you think eventually people are going to start revealing a bit more and then opponents are going to have to adapt? And like, how do you see this developing over time?
Yeah, well, we've seen, even since the beta, we've seen so many different meta games now. Because like, if you look at, I'm going to compare it to CS again. If you look at CS, everyone has the same kit. And the meta does evolve, but it's much more slower than I think Valorant's going to be. Valorant is like a patch can decide how your comp is running and how you want to play and how you approach the game. And that's really what's most exciting for Valorant for me, is that a new agent means a new meta and it means a new game style.
It also seems like there's much more value in surprise.
Yeah, there does.
Surprise factor
100%.
in Valorant. because there's so many different ways that abilities can be combined together. Just the sheer amount of stuff that you can do is overwhelming in terms of the volume of stuff that you can throw at somebody. But once you know where some piece of utility is going, most of the pieces of utility have some form of counterplay, but you have to be able to predict that it's coming in order to counterplay it. So I feel like the surprise factor in Valorant is really enormous and could lead to people holding stuff back for scrims, for sure.
Even if you look at our cam play, the cam play we did on one of the dig tourneys, I forgot the tourney name, but we were placing cams with certain map controls. But now if we go to attempt to do that, it's sniffed out so fast. We can tell, like, as soon as it's happened one time, that to do it again, it's I don't think we're ever going to see them cams on Haven, for example, work, just because people are aware of it now. So I agree. Like, the surprise factor is so important, but as soon as it's done, we move on to something else.
Other people from other games as well might be thinking, well, that just means like the game is getting better. Like if your predictable locations are getting sniffed out, then you'll just find better and better locations. But it's not like the game isn't improving as you figure stuff out. You're just limiting creativity during scrims. You're like axing a bunch of different strats that would have worked because of the surprise factor, but you end up having to go to more kind of default stuff. There's nothing in this game. I mean, there's some things in the game, but there's very little in the game that's uncounterable if you know that your opponent is going to do it. It's all about information. So if you're giving away that information, then you're not really like, the game isn't improving at that point. It's just getting predictable.
Rory, do you think in that sense then that with regards to attack and defense, that defense is mainly about reaction and adapting on the fly, whereas your attack, you're trying to have these plays and strats that you've not shown before, and then you execute them, and hence, the defensive side would be less about prediction, more about being able to adapt and react quickly.
I kind of somewhat agree with what you're saying. I think in terms of defense,
I'm asking as a question.
Okay.
I'm just theorizing. Then,
I think
how the meta would play out.
I think it's such an information game. So anyone that has information, it's about timing when you select the information or not. This game on defense side, at least, like I like using Cypher in a way where if they've defaulted and gone quiet, I can figure out it's not my site later on. And same with server, we apply the same thing to server. Like we're not using utility on CT side if they're not using utility, and it's the same thing. It's the same kind of concept you take from CS. Like if they're not taking map control and using utility, we don't have to spend it till late. So CT, I think, is mid to late game information. And attack, honestly, this game, some people might not agree with me, but this game you don't have to do a lot. It's not like you have to take a ton of map control. You have to get in really nice spots. You have to be super random. On a default, on an attacking side, you don't really have to do much at all. If you're careful on a default and survive and end the site, the chances of you winning is pretty high, to be honest.
I think one thing that I wonder if we'll see, much like in the StarCraft Broodwar world again, is like, because in that, you definitely need to hide your strats and your build orders and so on. Having like an academy team so that specifically so you can keep practice and testing new things, like just you can do that whenever with the academy team. You don't need to worry that they're going to leak stuff, hopefully, and that way you can hide even more and get the practice that you need, as well as having an academy team. There's a lot of benefits for just having academy teams anyway. It seems like that would be a necessary evolution in this game. Do you agree with that? Is that something that we'll see?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's really the important thing with like the tier 2 and 3 competition. Like if we are going to practice something against a TSM or a Sentinels, I'd rather practice that against a tier 2 and a tier 3 team, or as you said, as an academy team. So it gives you that chance of practicing it, so you don't have to run it for the first time in a match, but you actually have that practice under your belt. And normally the tier 2,
and you've not revealed it to
exactly
opponents.
Yeah, because they're smart. Like teams will sit and they'll write down the stuff that you're doing. It happened in CS. It will happen in Valorant. They're ready. They're writing down and jotting down what you're doing in a scrim. And we do the same thing. And
previously, I feel like the downside of playing against a against academy teams, sister teams, stuff like that. The reason that it doesn't happen in Overwatch, at least very much, even though it was theorized to be really useful, is that Overwatch is such like a fluid game that when your opponent doesn't react like a top team, you're not really playing the game out as it would flow in that top level match. If you're not getting pressured in the same way, you're able to get much more space. You feel like this strat is going to work, but it doesn't end up working. In Valorant, I feel like you can mitigate that somewhat. Like if you know that the other team isn't good enough to be able to pressure you, you can still say, well, at least if we have this amount of map control, we know that the execute is going to go from here. Or there's some things where it doesn't matter about what your opponent is doing because you have the abilities to be able to force your way into an area anyway. So I think that you can still get theoretically should be able to get really good practice against some kind of sister team or tier 2 team as well, especially for like faster paced kind of plays rather than the slower, more defaulty stuff.
Yeah, and we see this is obviously just a human behavior thing, but we see towards the end, later at night, when you're talking about like 6-7 PST, the scrims, even if you're playing like a really good team, the scrims deteriorate obviously. So we find after like a certain time, practice isn't worth it, and we'd rather just go on the server on a custom and come up with some stuff.
Well, with this talk of sort of like academy teams and stuff like that, I think it's also interesting just like developing as a talent development tool, and I know that's always something that's difficult. And right now we've had lots of rosters trying to kind of figure out who they should pick up, and I know, for example, with 100 Thieves, they were trying to figure that out for quite a while, and they finally got some players on board to complete their roster, which is exciting. And I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on 100 Thieves in a moment. But firstly, we have T1 finally completing their roster as well by having DaZe announced as the IGL, which is something that we're kind of like speculating about previously, because it's just kind of funny that all you would need to add to that team is Steel, and then you have the iBuyPower roster that got banned, which is really funny. Just like 5 years on, the guys, coming back together again and probably being a very legitimate team still. That's like a very interesting storyline. But T1 have picked up Spider from the Overwatch League, or Sire Player, as he was called there. So I guess, Sideshow, you're the perfect person to tell us a bit about Spider, and is he going to be a good fit for this T1 team?
Sire Player, I'm going to keep calling him Sire Player because that's what he was called in Overwatch, but I'm talking about the same guy. He was a ridiculously good mechanical talent. He played the Widowmaker, which is basically the sniper in Overwatch, and he was you could tell watching the guy that he had ridiculous aim, like really smooth, good, crisp, raw aim. But even when this year the hero was in meta for the majority of the year, he didn't really get any playtime this year at all. And I don't know the exact reason for that, but he's also been on the worst team in the entire league, basically. He was on teams that went like 9-20 and stuff like that, like the really poor level teams at the bottom of the league, despite the fact that he was individually a very talented player. So I would theorize that possibly something to do with the team play is lacking there, or to do with the diversity, maybe because of his play style as well, of it being very aim centric. But I don't know how that's going to really translate over to Valorant, because the games are so different. As it comes to like mechanical skill, the guy should be talented enough to be able to play at a top level. From the little that I've seen, apparently he used to be big in Korean CS before he came over to Overwatch, and I think is quite an aggressive player as well, which seems to be the kind of role that T1 would need. But it seems like such an odd cultural fit for me, because even though the guy can speak English really well, it's like all of these old school CS players that got banned for ages and are trying to recreate magic, and you've thrown in a young Korean Overwatch player.
I think that's
it's
so cool,
madness.
though. It is madness. I completely agree, but I think it's cool. I love cross-cultural stuff, and your analysis is completely correct, Sideshow. But I think that's I think that's awesome. And what he's fragging out, man, he's fragging out. I can see it on the stream. I'm excited to see how he does with these guys, if they gel well, etc.
So what role do you think he'll play, Sideshow?
if I had to theorize, I think he's going to play something very aggressive. I think he'll be like the Jet player. In fact, I think he's playing at the moment in a tournament, right? And he's actually playing the Omen right now. So
oh, my boy, I love him even more.
I've been talking, but I would have thought that he would have played the more aggressive style, because when I was watching T1 play, I felt like not only did they lack that like IGL talent, but they also all seemed to be really passive. Like none of them wanted to be the playmakers. I'm watching AZK play the Jet. He just looks so uncomfortable with the hero, with the agent, sorry. And I thought that they were adding Spider in to be that kind of aggressive player that they could rely on to make plays and take more risks, and they would play the like solid game behind him. But it seems like he's playing the Omen right now. I haven't had a chance to actually catch the match itself, but he's doing pretty well in terms of the fragging, I think. So
nice.
We'll have to take a look.
It's really interesting move, really.
I was gonna actually say, Def, like I wanted to understand from you what it's like as someone that's got a lot of CS experience coming into Valorant and playing with, like, you know, you got Superman and Psalm there, like Superman from the Crossfire world and Psalm from Heroes of the Storm, which is not even remotely related to Valorant, and then obviously Fortnite as well, which is a little bit closer. Like, is that just like super weird playing with these guys, or does it actually just kind of work and make sense?
Well, actually, what I've noticed from all these people that play different games, a lot of them have touched CS before. So Fat actually was Face It level 10 in CS, and obviously competing in Crossfire too. He's actually. I'm so surprised. Actually, I think Valorant's pretty forgiving in terms of coming from a new game. One of the most forgiving. But yeah, Psalm is obviously a really intelligent guy. He's competed in probably like 6 or 7 games now and been top 5 in a lot of them. So he reminds me of Rambo, Ron Kim. He's obviously he's Korean too, but just the way that he approaches games and the way that he sees games, it's very protocol-y, and it's very, here's the problem, this is how we fix it, and then we move on. So yeah, really impressed with Psalm, and Fat's just our little rifler. He's a smoke player, just runs around, not too much pressure, just killing people.
Who are your favorite agents, Rory?
Well, I'm obviously Cypher right now, so just Cypher, but I love playing Breach. I think Breach is still so strong. I can see him in every comp right now.
Yeah, I've always felt he's super strong, especially early on in the game. I mean, we're still early on, but as in at the very start, he's his flash especially.
He's a beast.
Yes, it feels like a boss.
And his ability to clear corners from his flash and from I don't know the name of the ability, but the thing that you can shoot through a wall.
Aftershock.
Yeah, the aftershock. Thanks, Mike. Like that's a really frustrating thing when someone catches you out with that, and then you have to make a decision between. Obviously, I always play Omen, so I always can teleport away. But say if I don't have one, or if you're a hero, an agent that doesn't have a TP, if you're forced to like now leave and take a fight that's disadvantageous, etc., he's a really, really good agent.
He's just so disruptive, and
yeah,
I think that's it. A lot of teams, especially the top tier teams, very slow playing, will execute as a 5 or 4 and have a lurk or 3-2 split or whatever. So Breach is the perfect guy for just disrupting that execute. Like if you're getting stunned and flashed whilst you come into the site, so annoying. Well, and I actually think we see Jet. I don't see Jet as a problem anymore. I don't know if we've seen the complaining stop, but I was an advocate of nerfing Jet, obviously. But right now, I don't see her as overpowered as such.
Yeah, that's good. Hopefully that will make it so that when people do pick Jet, it's a bit more creative in the usage as well. And because it felt like certain playstyles with her were so good that it's like it's just this opportunity costing. Why would you do anything else? So now that it's a little bit more balanced, and maybe some of the players, especially with the operator, a bit more risky, a bit more costly, you'll see a bit more crazy, more creative, crazy usages of Jet. Like I think Mike and I noted from I think it was Vision Strikers actually. Again, they've got a lot of innovative stuff, especially with Jet and Breach actually. But I wanted to also go through some of the other roster changes quickly, because we had I mean we didn't talk about Daze getting announced for T1 per se. Like we kind of glossed over it. Do you guys think that Daze is going to be able to do this? He wasn't really involved. Like in CS when he made that small comeback, it didn't really feel like his heart was in it, and he kind of just just bailed on it pretty quickly. And since then, I think he disappeared for a while. He was inactive, and then he's come back now. And now he's a pro player again. Like, is he going to have what it takes? Have you guys seen him playing that much? What does it feel like having Dazed leading this team? Is it
I've met Dazed a few times. I great guy in person.
Sam is a lot of fun.
Tuned into his streams. Very competitive person. I think it's hard to theorize if he's still got it, so to speak. I think anyone that is competitive and has shown they can do it before and that there's no real reason that they can't do it again, if they put in the work again, they can do it. So I believe in you, Sam. Do your thing, man. It's so cool. Like Sideshow was saying, those four coming back together, and now they've brought on Sire player. Did you say?
Spider is
Spider now in Valorant. Like, I hope that he makes it work. I hope Sam can do it.
I think it's always hard to tell exactly what's in a guy's heart, like how much he's willing to put into it. That's something that only he can really know. And we'll see it play out in reality. But there's one clear thing is that T1 definitely needed an IGL. Like, they looked really lost at many different times in their previous tournaments. And so he is the right fit for that team. He's the right role. I worry a little bit that they're trying to recreate Magic from so many years ago. Like, I don't know, when you try and bring... It's like a ghost of the past and you're trying to reanimate it rather than making something fresh. But maybe the slight difference in terms of it being a new game and their careers being kind of able to have new ceilings on them is so different here that it might revitalize that same energy that was there in the past. It's not like they were ever able to hit their peak and they're trying to recreate the peak. They were kind of stunted while they were growing, and this is an attempt to try to regrow that same energy.
I think that Sideshow actually, like, it's less about reanimating a corpse. It's more so that they were stopped before they could reach their peak, in my opinion. And now I think this is the storyline in my head, right? It's like they're getting another chance to run it back, sure. And there's no reason why they can't give it another good go and make things happen that they weren't able to before. So I wish them the best.
They need the same energy they had when they were the first iBuyPower core. Like, right now, if there's so many Zoomers running around, sorry about the word, but there's so many Zoomers that will insta headshot you, and they're playing all day, every day. If you're not grinding, if you're not playing every day, you're not gonna. It's just there's no chance.
Yeah.
But like, even in CS, I saw towards the end of my career in CS that the kids coming through, they play so much. It doesn't matter what you do or how smart you are than them, they'll kill you. And it's the same thing in Valorant. Like, some of these players are so sharp, and you have to be putting the hours in, essentially. So I think if Sam's going to do well, he just needs to play a ton, because he obviously has the skill. He's a good leader. If he can keep his attitude like in a good level and the work ethic there, I think he's got a good shot.
So the last roster change.
Oh, sorry, Dan. Quick. Do you guys think? So how do I describe it? Phrase this question. Do you think this is kind of like an active choice by those four to come back together, or do you think they've ended up joining a team? They've ended up on the same team just by happenstance. I think they've I think this is what they've wanted to do, and they've wanted to do this again.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they were all stayed friends, and they want to do it. We'll try and run the gauntlet again.
It makes sense too, because I feel like that team, although their trajectory was cut short, I felt like their trajectory, it couldn't have had Steel and Dazed. I think it felt like that would have been too much in terms of two players who have a lot of they both wanted to be their way.
A lot to say.
Yeah.
two headsets.
Shout out Sam and Josh, by the way.
But yeah, the last roster change that news that we got this week, which I think is interesting, is sort of the building of the NRG roster. So you got Daps and Som on NRG. Cola was announced for that team as well. Chet as well, going into the kind of coaching spot, who's been on NRG previously. And then we've got, I never know how to say his name. Is it E?
It's just EU.
EU, yeah, there you go. Okay, so EU was the one that was announced. Do you guys have any thoughts on some of these roster additions for NRG and where this team's going to be going?
Chet is a massive pickup as coach. He had brilliant results on the teams that he was on in CS. And he's, as far as I know, extremely dedicated to his craft. He puts in a lot of work to analyze things, and he's very optimal in his approach to his work. And of course, he's worked with Daps before, and I think it's cool. I think it's a good decision to bring those players and him on as coach.
Yeah, I think they could be a really good team. I also see right now, I'm sure if we had Daps in this conversation right now and we asked him, hey, what's it like finding players right now? I'm sure he'd tell us that it's pretty difficult. I've seen him, they've been trialing out a ton of players. So I know it's right now it's really up in the air on players that you can pick up. So
whose dog is that? Is that yours?
My dog. He's
bring him in, man.
What is the story of Daps from CS? Because from what I understand, he's like he's got a very good reputation for building teams, but not really being good enough individually to stick around on them. Is that the story of Daps?
He's been good enough for sure, but I think there have been moments in his career where there were other options available for the teams, and he kind of got pushed a bit to the side. Lovely, Rory. I think he got pushed a bit to the side because of other options, and perhaps because when he was on those teams, they didn't always have the best results. He was an easy target as a person that could be moved off the roster because he's been great, and they've had a great player, and he's put great input into his teams, and on the teams that he was on, especially NRG back, I want to say 2017 and 2018, they did pretty well at times. I remember a Star Ladder where they reached semi-finals that I was at. Yeah, I think due to circumstance and being an easier target than the rest of the players around him, that it maybe put him in a position where he was often being removed from rosters. So I don't think what you've picked up is wrong, but I think it would be wrong to doubt him as a player if anyone out there is.
Yeah, I think he was interesting insofar as he's able to do quite well enabling players and working people into a system, but then eventually, it would sort of the team would outgrow him in terms
That's
of
a good way of
where
putting
they
it.
were
Then I think
getting. Yeah, that seemed to be sort of consistently his story. And what's interesting about this game is that mechanically, there's not as much of a demand as there is in CS, or at least it feels mitigated in some senses by sort of the things that we were mentioning previously as to how tactical the game is, how much variation there will be. So that actually could, if Daps is going to be able to have a lot of value in the calling in this game, as well as developing the playbooks and like understanding his team and his players, as was one of his strengths in CS, he should actually fare better. It almost feels a little bit like the way I look at Finesse in this game as well. I feel like Finesse is much more suited to this game than CS, just from what I've seen already so far. Like I feel like Finesse has done like a lot of really good stuff and shown great understanding for the game, and actually is able to show off his intellectual chops a bit better than in CS, where that gets a bit overshadowed by mechanics at times, and you can just get shut down so easily if you can't hang.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree with the point you're making. I think both FNS and Daps, and a lot of in-game leaders that struggle in CS towards the end I think a lot of it is you get punished mechanically, and obviously they've shown, them two, FNS and Daps have shown really, really good at procuring talent and making sure the talent plays well for them. So I think I agree with you. I think Valorant is the perfect game for them too, because we know that they can play well and they're smart, and we know that Valorant is much less mechanically demanding than CS is.
Yeah, it should hopefully make it a lot more exciting in terms of like maybe we'll have IGLs and rosters that stick around for longer periods of time, because that let's say maybe because your motivation isn't keeping up and you can't put the hours in, your mechanics slips, and then you go into a slump. Like hopefully that kind of stuff will happen a bit less in this game. I guess we'll see how it goes over time, but with that said, it is time to move into the Ask Us Anything segment. So if you have questions for any of the guests here on the show today, please throw them in the chat and we'll kind of go through those. I will quickly, whilst we're waiting for some of the questions to come in, quickly start things off, Rory, by asking you, how things are going with the roster at the moment. If there's anything that you can share, and if not, that's totally cool. But how's that experience going for you guys right now? As you are, at least you haven't announced anything officially as to like what the roster will look like.
Yeah, well, I already saw it on Reddit, so I'm sure it's out there already. But
okay.
right now we're playing with Odoros and Makarov. They both came from CS. And this is the first time we're going to go into a tournament completely prepped. Our last tournament with Shanks, we had probably like 2 days before we actually had to play. So this is going to be, for us, the first time that we can actually show everything that we have. So, yeah, we're really excited moving forward to the First Strike tournament.
Is that involving role swaps as well, or are those direct 1-for-1 replacements, or do you not want to?
Actually, that's what we were looking for. We went through this trial period of trialing. I think we trialed almost 10 people. So, and then we kind of stumbled across 2 guys that knew each other. They've been friends for a long time, and they directly plopped straight into our comp. So,
all right,
we couldn't be any more happy with the guys that we picked up.
Awesome. All right. Well, quick note. I know that you have to go at 15:15, Paula. So I just want to be sensitive of keeping respect of your time.
Yeah, it's fine.
frame.
Obviously, you guys carry on. I've got to go in about 5 minutes, but yeah, it's all good,
Nice.
boys.
Yeah, if you see any questions out there that you want to answer. In fact, actually, I'm going to ask you a question, Paula, because we've been having this question come up a few times on the show. It's interesting hearing people's thoughts. Phantom or Vandal? Where you at?
Phantom, bro. All day, attack and defense, mate. Situationally, sometimes if I feel I'm playing a team where I really need to land that first headshot and it be a kill, I'll switch to the Vandal. The Dragon Vandal, by the way, which is amazing. Anyone that says otherwise is a loser. I love it. But yeah, 95% of the time Phantom, or maybe 90% of the time Phantom. I think it's great. I love it.
Nice. Well, we have a question from Maple for everybody. Opinions on how Sova will play on Icebox. Do you think it's worth picking, given the many corners to hide and not getting information with recon? Just like he's used as much on Split.
I would need more time to find out, but I think Sova's kit can always be utilized depending on if the angles line up. If you can land an arrow in a position, flush it out. I think Sova is still like such a high tier agent, but I haven't played the map enough to know, and I don't really know the ins and outs of Sova's mechanics and the limits. But from what I've seen, I don't see why he would never have a place on any map almost. But that's my opinion.
I feel like he's usable for sure in ranked on like Split and Icebox, but I think the better you get, the more you're trying to squeeze value out of the agents, the less he actually finds like his spot on those maps. So I don't think he's really going to see that much play on Icebox, to be honest, because the map seems less about the recon dart and the drone. There's just so many places to look that you get limited value out of those, I think, and there's just better agents, I think, to pick in that position.
I think Sky trumps Sova totally. I think Sky does the same thing essentially, but better.
The effect that Sky is going to have on Sova's tier, I think, is going to be interesting to see over the next few weeks, because her kit, whilst I don't, it's hard to directly compare them, but she has similar utility to Sova, and it's definitely going to affect, I think, how many people are playing Sova and his utility in certain situations compared to her.
I feel like he's still going to be so useful on Bind and Ascent, but I could see Sky getting played. I mean, I could even see Sky getting played alongside Sova in some compositions as well.
Or the info? Are you kidding? That'd be insane.
When it comes to Icebox, I feel like Sky is the obvious replacement because the Sova doesn't really find as much value.
Yeah, I think the Sova kit, his drone, the map's huge, so the drone's less effective. His ping, so many angles and corners, so his ping's less effective. And has a max range. And I think from A to B, like the max, that's over the Sova max range for his ult. So
maybe this was the design, right? They knew that they were going to be bringing this hero out with this map because they kind of pair together a bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think this agent is pretty much like 3 agents wrapped into one. So
the frozen tundra of Australia, Icebox and Sky really gel together.
With that said, Paula, I know you have to go. before you do go though, I want to ask you like what you have coming up in terms of like content and everything. Just give yourself a quick plug. What have you been up to?
Sure, if you want. Yeah, YouTube and Twitch as always. I'm like uploading on. I'm uploading on YouTube regularly. I'm live on Twitch. Should be live next week, Wednesday. My videos at the moment are going out generally at the end of the weeks. I was working with an editor before he's taken a break from editing for other people, so I'm reorganizing my schedule currently. And from next week, things should be sort of back to normal. So thanks, Dan, for that, and thanks for having me on again. Pleasure to meet you, Sideshow. Rory, I miss you. I hope you smash. I was very excited when you got picked up in Valorant, and yeah, I hope to see you in an event sometime, mate.
Yes,
do your
sir.
best. Do your worst, mate. I know you can smash it.
Appreciate you, dude.
All right, guys. Well, I'll catch you later. Thanks, everyone, for joining us in the chat. And yeah, see you in the future. Peace.
Peace.
See you, man. And we have a not so talkative guest to replace Paula. And we'll continue with the questions now. Right, we've got another 50 minutes or so to answer. Right, Nasanov asks, how does Dig do their server time practice? Is the IGL and coach, if there is one, prepare stuff beforehand and just talk for the majority of the time, or is it purely brainstorming of the new ideas?
Yeah, right now, currently we do it. It's pretty traditional in terms of I bring stuff to prac, or the team have suggested stuff and we go over that. Normally it's just they're spectating me and I'm flying around and showing what we want. But we also allocate time to just free thinking. I think it's really important, especially as new agents come out. We've seen like, I feel like this is a game you can be so creative in. So I don't want to stop anyone from being creative. So we kind of we have the set stuff that we do and work over for a select period of time. And then we have a period of time where we can just free think and see how we approach the game together.
All right. Well, the next question is from Pixu, which this is actually a really cool question. As more and more agents are added to the game, do you think teams will start picking up more than 5 players and have people specialize in agents similar to the Overwatch League?
Yeah, that's truly interesting. That's a really interesting question. I think that's one of the things we won't know until it happens. But yeah, even now, I'm picking up players that I feel like can play multiple agents. I don't want a player that can just play one specific agent and has been playing it since beta, because we know the game's going to be changing. We know that agents are going to be changing, and it's going to be different maps. So I always look for people that I can tell that can play a variety of different agents. And that's not just from Brim to Omen. That's from Brim, Omen, Raze. If you can do Duelish, you can do Smokes. Like, the difference is it's not that much, I don't think.
I think it comes down to the agents that they add into the game. Like, everyone knows that there's going to be a lot of agents in the game, but if the agents themselves don't require hyper specialization, then you're not going to need extra players on your roster, and you're going to get more out of just the 5 that you have available. But if there's, I mean, the way that Skye works, for example, with the tracking her flash around the map and stuff like that, I feel like there's going to be spots that you want your Skye to get really nerdy on. And the more nerd possibilities the agent has, the more that you're potentially going to want an extra player to play that if it does become meta. So I think it comes down to a bunch of different stuff. It's way down the line, though, as well. There would need to be a lot more agents in the game, and the agents that they added would have to be really nerdy ones for you to be able to get value out of that 6 player, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you said about specialized agents, and I think Jett is one of the most specialized agent right now in terms of the type of player that can play Jett and how well they can play Jett. It's like Jett isn't OP unless someone that is really good on her is playing her. So I see in the future that some people are so good on certain agents that you ignore the meta composition and you actually play to your strengths. So I also see that developing.
Yeah. I also think there's some situations in which the top teams will be so good with a comp that that'll almost define the meta, but the bottom level teams would be so much better just playing different compositions. Like the you know, like the tier 2, the people that are making it quarters and maybe sometimes getting to a semi, trying to emulate the top teams because they believe that's the best composition, but actually they would be better playing to their own strengths. That happens all the time in Overwatch, and I feel like it's going to definitely happen in Valorant as well. I feel like it currently does happen quite a lot over in well, across across the world. Actually, I was going to say in Korea and Europe, but it also happens in NA. I feel with the like middling NA teams playing so much Jet and Phoenix that they can't quite replicate the same magic that the top NA teams can.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's funny about the Phoenix thing. We had Scream on last week with Link as well from Liquid, and Scream was just like he's just exclaiming as to how baffled he was that in NA that you guys are able to make Phoenix work. He's just like, I just don't get it. Phoenix is bad. So, but
Really?
yeah,
That's so interesting.
It was really interesting. Yeah,
maybe because we see in Europe that we don't see the same level of competition yet as NA. There's got to be some nasty Phoenixes in the EU. If you put Nico on on Phoenix for a couple of months, he'd be the best Phoenix in the world.
Like Counter-Strike Nico?
Yeah, you know, like if you take that level of player.
Yeah.
I know
it's fascinating.
Soulcast played a little bit of Phoenix, and Zipan tried it a little bit as well, but I think the region was just tending more towards the more like utility-based stuff instead of the flashing out of smokes and trying to overwhelm people and frag on it.
Well, we have
style.
We have another question through from Kami Esports who asks, are there any teams to look out for from any of the regions? And I think it's just like a question about like who have been the most impressive teams from various regions, and who should we be paying attention to that maybe we're not right now?
Go watch Brazil. My answer to this is always going to be the same. Brazilian Valorant. Brazil in CS has such a vibrant scene. Then it's also got Rainbow Six as well, where Rainbow Six is enormous over there as well. And I think a couple of those people have come over. It's not very well supported in Overwatch, so a lot of the Overwatch people have moved over to play Valorant as well. There is a huge amount of competition happening over there. Some incredibly skilled aimers as well in the Brazilian region, and they play a really aggressive, interesting style that they've only within the last month they've started to temper it and play more of like a defaulty tactical stuff. But they've got such a great foundation of really large player base and very good mechanical skill that I think it's almost impossible that there isn't a Brazilian team that would be in the top 10 right now. Genuinely, I think that if we had a big global tournament, there's so much competition at that level that I think one of them would be able to batter their way into the top 10 and like maybe make a quarterfinal or something like that. The upset potential from that region, I think, is so strong because no one's paying attention to them right now.
Oh my God. It's just every time we talk about that international global sort of event where all the regions clash, it's just, I mean, that's what the game is designed for. Like we have, even within the same regions, we're saying like every team has a different style of play. It's just so interesting. You just wouldn't be able to predict what would happen. So,
yeah. And we see coronavirus like setting this all up right for the big stage. So really exciting.
Yeah. Right. We have a bunch of other questions, actually. We have one question from Danny Phantom FM to you, Def. Will we see you switching to Killjoy on Icebox or to your preferred Breach?
Totally unsure right now, but I'd say that I'm probably going to be playing Killjoy. I'm definitely stuck on the Killjoy Cypher kind of vibe right now. I'm hoping that we see a meta shift in where I can move off and maybe play a Skye or a Breach. That would be fun.
Yeah, and actually, going back very quickly to the Brazil thing, Sideshow, I wanted to obviously, plug Plat Chat a little bit because I know that's you guys have, I don't actually know how long you've been going for, but it's relatively new. You don't have too many episodes just yet. But I know you were talking about Brazil specifically on one of your episodes recently. So do you actually want to tell us a bit about that? Because I know that people would love to see that content if they've missed it.
Yeah, I think we're on like our 14th week of podcasting at the moment, but we just moved over to a new channel, so it kind of looks like it's brand new. And the reason we moved over to a new channel is because it was previously the most popular Overwatch podcast, and we were doing it all on that channel still. And we were like, okay, we actually want to commit enough time to the Valorant stuff that it really deserves its own channel here. So we've been pushing out one video a day. We have like the big long podcast where it's 2 hours with myself and two other of the Overwatch League casters who are getting deep into Valorant, and then Wyatt Rivers, who he used to run an organization at the like tier 2-3 level in CSGO, and he's gotten deep into the Valorant scene as well. He's also a personal friend of ours and is good with the banter. So we have this like 2 hour long show, and then we've been producing a video a day, basically like primers for First Strike. So if we know that there's going to be a lot of new fans who are coming into the game to watch First Strike because it's a Riot run tournament. So it's like, okay, here's what you need to know about Dignitas, for example. You might not know this team. Here's like their storyline. Here's what they were really good at. Here's the style of the team and why you should root for them as fans. And we've been trying to do that across. We've done one about Vision Strikers and one about Fusion Fraggers as well to kind of take fans through Korea and Brazil as well. And we actually recently did the first highly produced and edited video. I've been wanting to do a video about Killjoy for so long because when she came into the pro scene, it was like 21 days after she had been released, something like that. And I felt like some players were getting really big value out of her, and some people had just misunderstood how to play her completely, even at the pro level, because people were still getting to grips with it. And so I went back and looked at every VOD that had been recorded of Killjoy and put together this big long video, which we split into two parts about how the pros are playing it and how she kind of fits into the meta game. Obviously without Icebox being used, but yeah, you can go and check that out if you're interested in learning more about Killjoy's place, because I think she will get a lot of play over in First Strike, depending on the maps.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. I think people would. I mean, it's great content, so people definitely need to check it out. And actually, I asked Paulo this question earlier, but I wanted to, because we're coming to the end of the show now, because we're getting everybody's thoughts on the Vandal and the Phantom. And it's actually been really interesting hearing people's different opinions. For example, Scream, as you would expect, he's a Vandal lad, although he started talking about how cute the Phantom is, and sometimes emotionally he's got that connection to the Phantom that he just has to pick it up. And Shazam is convinced that the Phantom is just completely superior still. And it steals like Vandal all the way. So it's been interesting seeing kind of how things are going back and forth. We asked Paulo earlier, where do you two guys stand on Vandal or Phantom?
Well, I think it's a great thing that we're actually talking about the weapons and not at least it's 50-50 right now, it seems. So it's nice that there's a balance there where people can choose which gun they want to use. But for me, I use the Vandal personally, but I think Phantom's the better gun. So that's kind of strange. But I think the fact that I think the Phantom just insta-kills multi-kills instantly. And I think that's why it trumps the Vandal at times.
Yeah, I feel like pros should be normally favoring the Phantom on defense because of that multi-kill factor. Like if you're going to be playing in a spot where you're going to need to be spraying multiple people down and you can't control how many people are going to be running towards you when you're sat on defense, you almost need the Phantom. I mean, unless you're crazy good at being able to use a Vandal. But then when you're on attack, I see these European freaks just getting so much value out of the Vandal. Even when the op was at its absolute max, like Zipan's just peeking around tiny little cracks and headshotting
Angel too
from miles away. Yeah, Angel's ridiculous with it as well. These guys are just so good with that gun. And so I can definitely see the value. Now, my aim is atrocious, so I always use the Phantom because your boy's aiming for the center of map.
Phantom, sometimes I accidentally kill a guy and I'm like, I don't even know what just happened. I feel like Phantom sometimes just insta kills the guy. It's so
yeah, you let Jesus take the wheel and you just spray. Yeah, but I definitely think that at the pro level, there's still arguments for utilizing the Phantom specifically on defense, but even with how good the Vandal is right now.
Yeah, I've played against people that are insane with the Vandal. I know Hiko's good with it. I know the guy Corey from FaZe, insane with it. Yeah. So I can see like certain players using it, but I think Phantom's going to be probably like 60-70% the majority.
All right, cool situation for the game to be in.
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, it's really cool.
The only gun that I have personally an issue with, I think, is maybe the Ghost, just because it feels like it just gets way too much value for the cost, and that it makes that second round feel too it's like too punishing to lose the pistol because it's so viable to carry that Ghost through to the second round.
Yeah, totally. The Ghost is I think maybe they reduce the damage that it does to the chest and the legs. So when you are picking up the Ghost, you expect to aim for the head to kill a guy.
Yeah.
I don't know the changes they do to it, but I agree. I think it's easier to get eco'd or thrifted on this game than it is in CS. Like it's on a knife edge, it feels like at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. And with that point, it is going to be time to close the show for today. Thank you guys for joining us here on Immortal Minds. It's been a pleasure. We already talked about Plat Chat a lot, Sideshow. Is there anything else that you're doing in the Valorant universe or in general that you'd want to tell people about?
I'm going to be doing companion streams, the co-streaming for the Renegades tournament that's happening this weekend over on my personal Twitch channel. It's twitch.tv/sideshow. I'll probably be doing that for some tournaments in the future as well. It's just a cool thing that I used to do a lot in Overwatch, which I've seen is pretty popular over in the Valorant universe as well, with Myth and Sean Garrett and a bunch of other people doing it too. So going to dip my hand into there.
Shout out to you, Sideshow. I actually stole one. I think it's straight off one of your YouTube videos. So
really, which one?
We called it Japan Win, and it was the bind. What do you call it? Showers.
Oh, the Vision Strikers one.
Yeah.
Okay, well they're Korean, but I appreciate
it. We called Japan Win, so it's staying there again.
All right, fair enough. I think they did it against a Japanese team, so
okay,
we can get away with it there.
Japan lose, we might call it now.
That is so epic. Nice, yeah. We've been doing a lot of VOD reviews on Vision Strikers and Jupiter. They are a lot of fun to watch, really innovative.
Yeah, they really are.
Dap, you got anything going on you want to tell people about?
No, we're just on the grind. Make sure you check out First Strike. People in the chat, we'll love your support. Obviously, we're going for the big one. Really excited for that. Been practicing really hard. So first tournament for us that it's going to be full set 5 for a long time and fully practice. So yeah, Outstride is First Strike and nothing else right now.
That's awesome to hear, especially because you were kind of just dropped in. It felt like very last minute with regards to like when you were playing the Pop Flash tournament and everything. So really, really awesome to hear. I look forward to seeing what you guys are capable of in this game. And with that said, now it's time to let you guys know what's going on here for Immortal Minds. As per usual, we'll be live on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time with another VOD review. I'm going to be live tomorrow playing a Diabolical tournament at 2 p.m. PST. And other than that, I think that kind of covers it. So if you're not already in the Discord and you want to find additional people to play with or to chat about Pro Valorant, that's a great place to go. And otherwise, if you missed any of this live show, you can catch it on the VODs upload tomorrow on our YouTube channel. And with that said, that is everything. That's all the business. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.